Siren Head
is everywhere.
Siren Head, very cool character design.
The Siren Head, he hits different. This is all conversation of the now.
Yes. Siren Head, very interesting character created by
Trevor Henderson.
Trevor Henderson, the son of Jim Henderson, creator of the Muppets, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Very interesting character design. A abnormally tall, lanky, skeletal guy. Now I know what you're thinking, Slenderman. Oh, Slenderman ripoff. But no, because he has sirens for a head, like a siren post, right? Pretty interesting visual, pretty interesting look. Interesting concept because you hear him coming. He's not a sneaky Pete. You know, he blares his warning as he comes for you, right? And I saw an interesting image meme where Slenderman is saying, you know, no, you're not supposed to announce that you're coming. You're supposed to be all sneaky. And then Siren Head is next to him and he goes, haha, Siren goes brrr. You know, that meme. But I wanted to see what you guys thought about the very recent complete oversaturation of Siren Head material on the internet.
I think I feel for Mr. Henderson because...
I feel Mr. Henderson.
I feel you, Mr. Henderson. No, it's that double-edged sword of making something really popular on the internet organically and then everybody just using it. And even with good intentions, making games and not asking you and a lot of different stuff. I think what's interesting to me about Siren Head is that Trevor made it, and I'm trying to find the original tweet of where it first came up, because he does the image, and then he has a little small paragraph blurb of just a tiny bit of backstory. Mm-hmm. And that also is a shared similarity with Slenderman.
Right.
The difference is Slenderman was the product of the contest of, hey, expand on the story. And so at Slenderman's outset has kind of more of a narrative to him. He singles people out. He steals kids. He can appear anywhere. Mm-hmm. And
he's been there throughout history in all different photos and shit.
Right. Siren Head is kind of just, this is not like knocking it at all. It's just, it's a creepy monster. And oh no, it comes out of nowhere and except it's really fucking tall and you can hear him for miles. Mm-hmm. There's people have been trying to write stories about it, and I've seen a lot of games and just a lot of animations, and it's, oh no, look, it's Siren Head. Yeah, all he can do is be loud and walk towards you, and then you die.
Here's the thing. I, for one, am cautiously optimistic about the, educated resurgence of internet horror.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm hoping that the people who are most important to certain aspects of internet horror have learned from Creepypasta. I don't think Siren Head is a Creepypasta. I don't think it's related at all. I think that Creepypasta and its rise and fall, I hope that it has educated some people, because Trevor Henderson has, quote-unquote, gone after, as in, publicly stated that he doesn't approve of, people who make, games where they're, trying to profit from the character.
Mm-hmm.
He has gone out there and put out his own description of Siren Head and what it does. As opposed to the Slenderman thing where the internet just grabbed it and ran with it and created its own stuff. Same with Jeff the Killer, same with everybody else. Inventing it, just sort of as a melting pot.
Jeff the Killer is kind of a bad example because people have been kind of relatively consistent with Jeff the Killer.
Well,
Jeff the Killer is not hard to write, whereas I guess Slenderman isn't hard to write either, but people fuck that up all the time.
See, the thing with Jeff the Killer is, you have the original image and you have the original story, and then you have the well-recognized story, and then the well-recognized story that branches off, and that has remained very consistent. But then you get the people who are and then there's Jane, and then there's his brother's a killer too, and then Jeff actually is romantic with this character, and it's sort of spun off out of control. I'm optimistic and hoping that we rein in all this stuff where people are Siren Head is doing the Gangnam Style dance, and Siren Head is actually 400 feet tall. He's growing tremendous proportions over time.
Right.
I hope that gets reined in a little bit, and people, maybe we learn from the mistakes of Creepypasta. I don't know, probably not, but
I hope so too, because, for instance, Trevor publicly said, I don't want him to be an SCP. He's not an SCP.
Right.
That, changes his licensing and all sorts of stuff. The only thing that will really prevent that from happening isn't even if Trevor like starts bringing down the lawyer and the DMCA hammer on people. It's if people will respect his wishes and not run rampant with it. Because at some point you can't control it if people are going to ignore that.
We could theoretically have a Siren Head movie, theoretically, within the lifespan of Siren Head being interesting. Maybe. As opposed to Slenderman, which came like a decade later and nobody gave a shit.
Like I was saying before, I don't think there's enough to Siren Head to make a movie. He's almost like a kaiju. He's there and he's really fucking loud.
I was about to say, you can make a fucking Godzilla movie out of him and it would be good. Godzilla movies have never been about Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like saying Evangelion is about giant fighting robots. It's like, not really.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, Slime Beast, but I think that what was interesting about Slenderman is, one, he's kind of like this modern take on a Lovecraftian character. Like, to put your visage upon him that in upon itself is going to drive you insane. However, the issue is that even though it's an open source character, just like Cthulhu, where you have people writing Cthulhu mythos and everyone who kind of knew Lovecraft wrote Cthulhu stuff and it branched out from there and it got cool and interesting. The issue is that with the internet, anyone can write, and that's not an issue. That's a good thing.
Right.
But it's opened it up to where there was no moderation. So that kind of comes back to an ideological difference that you and I have always had, where you have always been for kind of preserving the artist's rights, and I like the experimentation. And it's always kind of like this weird thing where we're both wrong and there's no good answer. There's no, like, it's good to have people experimenting and doing other Siren Head stuff, but at the same time, it's like, oh, but this handful of people are going to fuck it up.
I think I am all for... Here, I'll make a comparison. I'll make a stupid comparison. If you are a fan of fucking G.I. Joe, you're a fan of the old 80s cartoon G.I. Joe, you go to a G.I. Joe forum... Yes. I have no idea what you said, but... if you're a fan of the old G.I. Joe cartoon, you're a boomer or whatever, you go to a forum online and people are writing G.I. Joe fan fiction. There's a clear...
stop all the downloading.
Yes, exactly.
Hey kid, I'm a computer.
Oh, I see. Okay. That must have been what the earlier reference was. You can delineate clearly. This is the show. This is the official franchise, official merchandise, official property. And here is the fan fiction set aside where Roadblock and, I don't know, Scarlet have a, lurid love affair. That's not canon. That's something someone made up. But with, online horror fiction and a lot of things like that, and even modern cartoons like Steven Universe, Adventure Time, shit like that, it has become a little blurred where it's almost like fans write the actual canon. And, suddenly it's going to be Siren Head is 400 feet tall. And yes, he has tentacles. And, like that type of thing. He
wears a suit with a tie.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think there's a playing field that is so level, and it's good to have a level playing field, but it's so level that the original creator's word and the word of a 12-year-old who just heard about it and wrote a story one night is of equal value in terms of canon.
Here's where it gets really weird, though. 12-year-old who is writing their own fan fiction versus former lead writer of Overwatch, Michael Chu, have the same writing ability.
Yeah, that's true.
And
that's part of the further blurring of lines.
that's where you get into deep issues of maybe the 12-year-old has better ideas than Michael Chu does.
Definitely.
Well, this goes back to striking while the iron is hot as far as, if you're the creator, establishing enough permanent lore and a lot of, like, official lore. Not even, I just said lore, official medium and releases and pieces of media, basically. Like, if, I'm forgetting the creator of Slenderman.
Victor Surge, thank you.
If Victor Surge had, briefly after the contest, made a movie, or his own web series, not Marble Hornets, but his own web series, a comic book, other stuff, if he'd licensed that out even, and they all became as big as the original images, would there still be fanfic? Absolutely. But there would be a lot, there's almost this kind of psychological encouragement to not fuck with something so much. So if using the example of 80s cartoons, yeah, anyone can write Transformers porn, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of Transformers movies. There's a lot of Transformers comic books and toys. Like
And
everyone knows
some of the
line.
movies and some of the toys are Transformers porn in some ways.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think, and I'm not saying that Trevor should do this. Completely his thing to do, his IP. But it would, if he wanted to solidify this. This is basic intellectual property stuff. You have to fiercely protect your IP if you want to keep it, because at a certain point, not even the courts can put the cat back in the bag.
I think that on one hand, you do have enough lore really upon itself. It doesn't really have to be a lot with Victor Surge and Slenderman. It's two pictures, and then it's two little snippets of information, and it tells you exactly who he is. He doesn't have a face. He lures children. He's related to fires. And overall, I think that if you look at Marble Hornets, they kind of followed that directly. They were kind of faithful to it because they decided, hey, this thing is really cool. Actually, I have something that relates to that, and they build off of it. And then you get people who break out and they're like, no, but there's also like all of this other stuff. So I do think that Victor Surge in many ways did put out the information that was important and did protect it in many ways.
I mean, didn't he register? And then he sold it, of course, because he, had ownership. So it was like,
did he sell it or he just license it to Sony?
I think he sold it to Sony. I'm not quite sure. I don't know for sure, but I always heard it as he sold it to Sony. Now, maybe I was misinformed. I don't know.
I hope for his sake he just licensed it and didn't give it away hand over fist. I think Marble Hornets is a weird bird because it is a fan work that is, to a lot of people, considered equal canon. Because, as you said, it very closely follows the original prompts.
Let's be real, Victor Surge. I'm not diminishing what he did.
Right.
Slenderman is really cool, and he is a character that I absolutely love. Yeah. I fiercely defend, and the reason that I'm so critical of Slenderman stories is because they miss the point so often, so much. Mm-hmm. But homie got lucky as shit.
Yeah,
sure,
definitely.
Many things are a product of.
He was also posting on one of the most visited websites pre-Web 2.0.
Yes,
yeah. Like before. Yeah. Before Facebook was massively popular, before Twitter existed, different things like that, somethingawful.com was like, where am I going to go on the internet tonight? I guess I'll look at Something Awful.
Yeah.
But the result of that is that Marble Hornets really did develop on it, and they were very critical of themselves. They were like, hey, this part, these few episodes were kind of filler. We really need to put our nose to the grindstone and make something good. So they kind of valued Slenderman more than the original creator did.
Right.
Now, very clearly, it seems as though Siren Head is more valued by its creator, and not just because of the publicity and the positive reaction to it. I think he understands that he's onto a cool, interesting design and wants to protect that. So it does kind of put it in a different space.
Another thing I think that Trevor Henderson has possibly over Victor Surge is that Trevor Henderson has just been doing this shit on the regular as his labor of love. What is it, the grinning cat or cartoon cat?
Yeah.
Cartoon Cat is one of his creations. He's been doing this stuff. Siren Head isn't his one-off thing that he did for a contest. This is his passion. This is what he's been doing.
Yeah.
And, I think it's very interesting because, as you mentioned with Marble Hornets, did that invent the proxy idea?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I thought 100%. So. I thought so because
we came to his embrace, his arms outreach to us. So he was kind of turning kids into proxies in the Victor Surge original thing.
I would say
they developed on it. It wasn't Masky or
that was just the boogeyman seducing kids with candy.
Tim Curry.
It's not really making.
Yes,
it's not making proxies, but it's entrapping them.
Proxy is 100% a Marble Hornet thing.
Okay,
there's a nugget of an idea there that got developed in Marble Hornet.
The thing is, with Siren Head, we are, mark my words on this. I'm going to go out on a limb and do something. I'm going to make a prediction. We are one fan story or video away from Siren Head every so often playing a special note that turns you into a Siren Head proxy. I swear to God that somebody's going to do that at some point. And, this is what I say about, I don't want them to turn Siren Head into Slenderman in terms of, like, on the meta level, where,
right.
Trevor Henderson put out the thing recently where he wrote about different, like, disappearances and accounts, related to Siren Head, because, of course, he sees, the trend, and I guess he's going to build on that a little bit. But what he did was he wrote a very specific thing, because Slenderman, there's always been that question, what does he do? Why is he kidnapping people? What does he do to the people he takes? Trevor Henderson wrote this thing about Siren Head where he says people have been found with their ears ruptured, their eyeballs ruptured, their heads ruptured from sound. So I'm like, I'm on board with that. Siren Head gets really close to you and your head fucking bursts. Okay.
It's a very deliberate, narrow scope of an interaction. Right. And that's where it really differs from Slenderman. And that's where I'm saying, like, there's not a lot to Siren Head, but that's kind of by design. And that's a strength, if anything.
Yeah. And I'm fully on board with that. I'm like, okay, good. Yeah. Good to know. Your head blows up. Cool.
For sure. And but you can do both. I also like Slenderman a lot, and the fact that you can just kind of let your imagination run with what he's capable of has always been the appeal.
Right. It's just that thing that comes in where they're like, and then he turns the children into proxies, or he impales them on trees, or and you're like, oh,
and that's
okay.
The result.
All these different things. Cool.
That's the result of the low effort content that can be, and I don't mean that like you suck if you don't make something spectacular as a derivative work, but the low effort content that gets made around something. And we're seeing a lot of that right now with Siren Head. It's just, here's Siren Head, but he's doing a goofy dance in the distance. Here's Siren Head, the dating game, and it's just really shitty drawings and in a visual novel maker thing. And that's the biggest death knell of a creator's control over something if you don't have a lot of established media.
Right.
So, talking about G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe has movies and TV shows and all sorts of shit. You can write whatever /fic you want about it. It's not going to change people's major conception of the IP. Siren Head is on that cusp of, if something slips through the cracks, then that really could just be it. That could be the nail in the coffin if Trevor is not vigilant.
It could be just a flash in the pan of momentary success, for the character at least.
I kind of feel like, because he is so prolific, I do think that maybe Siren Head will be. I could be very wrong, but my gut instinct is, just judging by the original tweet, which does not have like hundreds of thousands of retweets or whatever. It's actually, it's not even that prolific. I think if something like Cartoon Cat or whatever he does next, has anything close to the same popularity or appeal as Siren Head, then Siren Head's just going to be old hat overnight.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm hoping that it's indicative of something positive coming out of everything that has happened, but
I share in your optimism.
Yeah. I feel like it just is like, here we are with Slenderman 2 almost, and like in positive ways. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I hope that the sequel is better than the original in terms of how like the, creepypasta community and, different things turned out. Like, I hope people, who are making illegal content about Siren Head get bapped early. And, different things like that where, maybe, like I said, I guess in the beginning of this, I'll just repeat myself, that people learn from the mistakes of the past.
It's so unfortunate that it has to be that way. Like, it really would be cool if it's just like, hey, I made this cool OC, please write stories about it. Like, it would be cool if you could put out Siren Head, and then the result is, how can I do something with that? What would I do with that? Mm-hmm. It is such a cool concept, but there is this contextual aspect to it that gets degraded over time of like, okay, well, now I've seen them do the Gangnam Style dance meme from 10 years ago. So now that kind of degrades the idea, the threat of it, the weirdness of it. And the issue, though, is that Siren Head doesn't necessarily inhabit the same universe that Slenderman does. Slenderman inhabits this universe. Slenderman operates on a extreme level of suspension of disbelief. Siren Head is like this fucking really surreal thing.
Almost like a Silent Hill villain.
Silent Hill.
Definitely.
Kind of Pyramid Head world, kind of like kaiju Silent Hill. And it's great, but it's not hurt as much. It would almost be easier if the two things were reversed. If you had Siren Head early, which isn't as hurt by the context of goofy memes, although it is somewhat.
Yeah.
And then you have Slenderman, who is more fiercely protected because apparently writers aren't responsible enough to realize the concept of Slenderman. Right. And I really hate saying that because it sounds really condescending and arrogant. But like, Jesus Christ, he's not a murderer. Like, it's right. Not fucking rocket science.
It's on the same level as all the people who attributed Candle Cove to a serial killer.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
A serial killer made the show. Oh, okay, fine. That's
completely.
Including Channel Zero. Fuck.
Completely takes the wind out of the sails, no pun intended. It makes me reflect a lot on Creepypasta's origins, which, you know, where it started was just about anonymous boards. It was about there was a communal ownership because there was very little ego behind where the story came from. And that is a beautiful thing, but we can't, because of Web 2.0, we really cannot go back to that, and Creepypasta will never really be able to resurrect that feeling. Maybe get close, and there are stories that we have read on the show that are excellent and immersive, but nothing can quite match the first time you've heard the Russian sleep experiment from or read it just randomly somewhere. And that, you know, it's a good and a bad thing. We've been fighting for authors' rights since publicly together, since 2015 or something.
Oof.
And that's, you know, it's a good thing. If someone makes something and they want to put their name on it, they deserve all the recognition and the credit and the protections that come with that. But that is a different beast. What Siren Head is a different beast than what Creepypasta, what its original appeal was.
Siren Head is the first great fear fiction character. Fear fiction, or FearFic, is the term for short horror fiction.
Including Siren Head.
Yes. Siren Head is FearFic. Oh, fuck. I'm going to tweet this right now. Hang on. Siren Head is FearFic.
Damn it.
Can we get Atticus Jackson to just say, FearFic is Siren Head. Yes. Siren Head is a FearFic, and just have him keep repeating himself for the intro.
Perfect.
No, but I do think that that there is that aspect of ownership that's always been problematic. Of you're not going to be able to recapture what our original Creepypasta was, and
right.
Web 2.0 is kind of like a weird term to even associate with it, because it is just like this rise in identity and internet personality, and it's like you want to know this author and you know the idea behind them and see all of their other work, but at the same time that anonymous aspect of it is just lost. And that's something that I think when you look at No Sleep, it's kind of lost, because it says right there, it's like, well, it was made by this author, this fictional author wrote this story that's supposed to be real, and it's just like trying to force on you this suspension of disbelief that isn't actually there. And that's just like this weird coercive thing.
And that's I think something that needs to change in the current state of where the major traffic and repositories of online horror fiction is, such as No Sleep. They're trying to artificially create immersion and intrigue by needlessly restrictive rules that say, like, no, you have to be in character. Well, that you break immersion 15 times before you even get to a story.
Yeah.
And I think that it really, we call it a crutch, and when I say that, I mean it's a crutch because there is a lot of responsibility taken off of the author to try their damnedest to make this an immersive story that really connects with people. And it's just, well, they have to believe it. if they want to respond, they're going to have to answer my questions I leave at the end, or basically approve of the story in some aspect. And not only is the responsibility slightly removed from the author, it's also, there's no way for feedback that would be, otherwise negative or even like kind of neutral, unless you want to DM the author directly or go to some other obscure ass place that the author may not even know about.
Which is the interesting thing, because you could have all of these other places where you don't need to have a giant focus on suspension of disbelief. I know recently, like I have known, obviously all three of us have known about Dave the Useless and what he does, narrating stories, writing stories, and writing what many people would call troll pastas, haunted DVD of Alf and shit like that. And recently, because we have read more of his stories, I went and investigated what he's been up to. People tweeted videos at me that he was doing talking about the state of creepypasta, and he had a lot of interesting things to say. He doesn't even consider the stories that he writes troll pastas. He considers them, because we read the Shrek story and we were like, okay, this is obviously like indulging in like corniness, but there's also like a weird kind of message to it about like, and onions have layers, and it's kind of like funny, but it is kind of intimidating at the same time. And that's the kind of kitschy nature of creepypasta that was originally there, and he's trying to preserve that. Whereas I think I'm, ash can kid mentality of like, no, everything needs to be real. He's kind of indulging in that. And if more people were posting outside of No Sleep and posting stories to, those kind of wikias where, quote unquote troll pastas are allowed, that would siphon off stories into different sectors where they're welcomed, as opposed to No Sleep, where there's a bunch of bullshit when everything's supposed to be real.
There's been a great disservice done to what people instinctually consider to be good online horror fiction. Because if you switch over to movies, everyone who likes horror enjoys, some will enjoy a combination of found footage, slashers, goofy, hilarious shit from the 80s.
I am 100% found footage.
I love found footage too. It's one of my guilty pleasures. But
which one of you loves found footage more? Find out when we have our Fear Fiction found footage contest. The Fear Fiction found footage fracas. There we go.
No one questions if you enjoy multiple types of approaches to horror, be it serious or funny. And creepypasta, for a long time, you had that variety, as Dave the Useless has said. And then when something like No Sleep is the biggest source of traffic and it only focuses on one thing, even though there is variety in No Sleep, it's just so incredibly buried that most of it's archived at this point, or it gets deleted, and it's so hard to find. You get... It turns into this just mono. It's a monolith of one type of approach, and it's incredibly stale.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's you go to the machine, you put your cup and get some ice in, and then you suicide. You get a little bit of every soda. And that's what happens. I want a little bit of found footage. I want a little bit of supernatural monster. Like, you get a little bit of everything, and it gets homogenized. And then you start drinking it, and you're like, sugar.
Yeah.
And you're not appreciating anything.
And it might as well just be 6 different dispensers of Diet Coke. The Shrek story was it reminded me of how the characters in fucking Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas must have felt.
Yeah.
It's a surreal drug trip. Yeah. And sometimes, and we enjoyed that story. It was batshit crazy, but it was a wonderful diversion from what we had been doing for like the month prior.
Because it was we weren't happy with anything for the month prior.
Yeah, and this was like, and it definitely benefited from the fact that we didn't like everything for the month prior, but that's the point. You need a diverse palette of things in your literature, because otherwise everything just turns into the same, and then eventually the trend changes, but it's all just, all right, everyone, new trend. You get sick of it right away.
Well, I think that we got overexposed to all three of us. I think at the time when we really were getting into this, Jeff the Killer was everywhere, Smile Dog, all of these kind of stories that I think we would all say we don't like, that they're not to our taste.
I would say I don't like the Friday the 13th movies, but I enjoy Jason as a character.
Sure.
Yes,
so, like, I don't enjoy
sure.
Jeff the Killer, but I think, you know, the image, the visuals of him, I'm like, well, you know, that could be an interesting thing if it had, you know, different bones underneath it, you know.
There's some redeeming factor to it.
Yeah.
But I think because of the icon pasta aspect of Creepypasta and the overwrought haunted gaming aspect at the time, we decided to reject that because it didn't give us that weird, uncanny feeling that you get when you like get to the end of Mr. Widemouth or Hands or, you know, whatever story. It didn't give you, we, I think, all appreciated that uncanny feeling and a Matt Pat. And because we appreciated that, I think we kind of neglected that there are these other aspects, even though we like that quote unquote ashcan horror realistic stuff. There is room for criticism. There is room to allow for this stuff, and No Sleep being this, you know, come one, come all repository for everything, and then claiming that it's realistic is kind of preventing us from having a dialogue about what it is we're consuming, whether it be, you know, any kind of quality or, you know, whatever, but it's preventing the discussion.
And the unfortunate reality of No Sleep is we're not going to, and even if we wanted to, we can't tell No Sleep how to conduct its business. Unfortunately.
But fortunately, we're mods on Creepypasta.
Mods and other things.
Nobody can tell No Sleep what to do because they have 14 million subscribers from the time period when they were an automatically subscribed Reddit. But anyway.
Which is exactly my point. Like, they have such a massive foothold that they just are what everyone's eyes are drawn to. Even though there are other subreddits of varying degrees of popularity, they're like, we can't say, oh, well, at least we have variety in other subreddits, because that's just not where most stuff is going. It really is on No Sleep to better curate and consider its framework, but there's no obligation outside of our opinions for them to do so. So we can't really affect that change other than in the small ways that we try.
I think the thing with the Creepypasta, what could be more apt than comparing it to pasta? I think that, you know, with a good Creepypasta, you're like, you know, I'm in for some variety. I'm gonna have, you know, some ziti. I'm gonna have some ravioli. I'm gonna have, you know, some of this, some of that. And there are a lot of stories out there, especially from No Sleep, that are like, here's your plate of spaghetti again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is just spaghetti. This is a Wendigo. This is a demon. This is a heartwarming tale with a cute girl in it. You know, this is your plate of spaghetti over and over and over again. And somebody might be like, what if you took pasta sauce and you have ravioli in it, but the ravioli is actually pizza rolls? And No Sleep is like, that's not real pasta. You know, that's not real.
I can't buy that in the supermarket, so therefore it's not real.
But it's fucking great, and it's when you have it, you're like, holy fuck, this is insane, and I should not be eating this, but wow, I want to have this.
You show up drunk to a party and go, holy shit, pizza rolls and spaghetti?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the best. That's the best party ever.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but it really does bear repeating. If you are writing a story and you're like, okay, this is a cool, interesting, you know, idea. It's unsettling. But people aren't going to get it, so I better have a skeleton Slenderman Wendigo pop out at the end. That is automatically limiting authors in a way that you don't want to limit them, and it's unhealthy, and it's just not productive.
I tell you what, it's like,
and you have to put it in the title too.
Yeah.
This is a Wendigo story. My story's not going to get seen. It's not going to get read by these narrators if it can't be in, you know, the top 5 Wendigo stories.
And I've seen people discuss this. A lot of people have said, like, do we have to have these ridiculous titles? I hate the fact that I pour my heart and soul into a story and it just has a more sensible traditional title and it doesn't get any eyes. And the most honest people in the replies will say, yeah, sorry, clickbait works.
Oh well.
That's just a reality of it. Everyone has absolutely accepted it because it's the fucking YouTube of writing of online horror fiction, and clickbait rises to the top.
The thing
But remember,
is with
clickbait is not allowed on YouTube. You are not allowed to deceive your
Right.
audience.
Sure. The thing is with like what you said about my story's not going to get any interest unless I throw a monster in here randomly or whatever. That's going back to the pasta analogy. That's the same as my kids aren't going to eat this with vegetables in it. And then someone else suggests, well, what if you get the pasta that's made from vegetables? And you're like, oh, that's good. The spaghetti is actually healthy, and they don't know. So it's like that thing of, oh, they're reading a monster story, but the kids don't know that it's actually something I worked hard on and, drew upon my real life experience to create,
Yeah.
They think they're getting a cool monster story. That's all they know.
Here's a weird thought experiment, if we may indulge.
Sure.
What would happen if you take, I don't know, I want to make sure we pick a story that's impeccable,
What would happen
that
if you
no
take
one
drugs?
could disagree. What would happen if you actually drink water? What if you take a story like, I'm just going to say,
Candle Cove. Candle Cove.
Candle Cove. You post Candle Cove. We are in an alternate timeline. Candle Cove never existed. You post Candle Cove, a story that many people like now and revere and say is great. What if you take a story along those lines and post it on No Sleep in an alternate timeline where they don't know about it? And it's just called Candle Cove.
Well, I mean,
Wouldn't survive.
I wrote a story called Codger's Cottage, posted it on No Sleep. It was about a children's television show that was wrong, something wrong about it. Got deleted as not being horror because the person said it just sounds like somebody asking about a show. It's not. There's nothing scary in it. So
Well, that answers that question,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Well,
but back to Siren Head.
Well, and to
Could you post Siren Head on No Sleeping with?
and to kind of reinforce that, another thing I see people talking about a lot, they bring up a lot. They say, is anyone else really burned out on just the milquetoast offerings that No Sleep has? How come we don't get stories like Pen Pal and Baraska anymore? And regardless of your feelings on either of
how
those
bad
stories,
Baraska is.
I also don't like Baraska, but it was very popular, one word title. The old guard and pretty much everybody who's just familiar enough with No Sleep will tell you, yeah, that's true. What was popular then will not be popular now. No Sleep has changed too much over time. So you can't, like I've said previously, you cannot recapture and reoffer what older creepypastas did.
You cannot go home.
You can't.
I don't know.
It has to be okay. Maybe it's not that you can't. It's exceedingly difficult because people they don't know that they may want that.
I think that all of the great creepypastas, and this includes things that weren't of high quality but are considered great within the community, like they're the kaiju of the creepypasta world, the giants. I think that all of them had a single glimmering shard of something original, an original concept that was universal. I think that Slenderman has the glimmering shard, the universal idea of a stranger around children. Who is that stranger watching the kids on the playground from over beyond the bushes? That's a very general concept that's universal to everybody.
Also, someone watching you without you necessarily realizing it, and then realizing it kind of like after the fact of like that person was. Yeah.
Similarly, Siren Head. What is that at the core? That's emergency. That's danger. That's panic. You hear a siren in the distance. You hear an air raid siren.
Those are pretty meta things right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people are on edge, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Pyramid Head.
It's two little pyramids on a pole.
Hey.
Two sirens.
I don't think our big siren boy has been around for a while now. Hasn't he been around for like a year or two? And he's getting popular now.
I think it's.
That does say something.
Honestly, it's because of the game getting on YouTube.
That was the biggest pull. Yeah, like I said, the original tweet of Siren Head is not that widespread. It's not a viral level of retweets and exposure. But you definitely, when the whole world feels on edge, like there's nothing but constant emergency alarm bells going off, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at everything. You look at Smile Dog, basically just a chain letter with a picture. Something everybody's gotten chain letters. Everybody's seen cursed images. Okay.
That's a weird one too, because like chain letters, they don't really have the same pull anymore,
Right.
unless you're like fucking 85 and still are working with a fucking computer from 1997 or something. But that had staying power because it's for a lot of younger readers. It was, oh my god, like an image can do this. It's not even just an email; an image can do it. Oh my god, like that's a frightening thing.
Oh my god, my aunt is sending me another Facebook message. Oh my god, she's spreading the word about Smile Dog again. Oh my god.
God.
I can't believe this. I can't even right now. But, as I said, I just think once those little shards are used, Candle Cove, a missing television show, show you saw as a child that you haven't been able to find again, Universal, simple. I think once those butterfly wings are touched, it doesn't fly again. I think that once you do a haunted house story and you do No End House, and that has enough popularity that people know about it, I'm sure there were tons and tons of stories before that people didn't read.
Mm-hmm.
But, once there's a big one, I think that after that, you can't get that magic back. And that's basically goes back to the problem with No Sleep and, different things like that, is you've got 1,000 people trying to recapture the magic of an idea that was already done best 10 years ago.
Well, not even necessarily done best.
Well,
just done.
Done biggest.
Interestingly.
Yeah, done biggest,
first.
I guess, yeah.
That's the interesting thing about Siren Head is, boy howdy, that's an idea, and they kind of hit it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
You like you're saying, you get the one shot, and they took advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. Could have
Not
put any
miss your
number of
chance to
things
blow.
on his head, and nothing else would have been as gripping as the emergency alert sound.
Palms are sweaty, head loud.
There's
Land spaghetti.
There are wires on his chest already, I guess. I don't know. Doesn't he have wires running down? Oh, whatever.
I don't think so.
It's kind of ambiguous.
It is.
Which is good.
It's a very visceral image, despite how kind of lacking in detail it is.
The wires are his tentacles. We're Slendermanning him.
Look out.
Sony Pictures presents Siren Head. A group of 4 teenage girls have to discover the secret of Siren Head.
Trevor, on the 0.001% chance you're listening to this, please don't let Sony make a Siren Head movie.
No
Please
Sony,
don't do that.
no
Give it to Blumhouse instead.
No!
Give it to Blumhouse.
Blumhouse.
We're here to watch Siren Head, the movie based on a picture, I guess.
Literally, yes.
I did want to say to Abysme, there is a post here from December 10th, 2019 on Twitter, where Trevor Henderson says, in regard to the creation of Cartoon Cat, someone asked him a question, and his response was, abandoned by Disney probably had a hand in it. Fuck you, Abysme. Things are based on abandoned by Disney.
I didn't say that Cartoon Cat wasn't.
I know. I'm just saying.
Said...
It's a cat. It's a cartoon. You got it best by Disney.
I mean, Cartoon Cat is Felix the Cat meets Abandoned by Disney.
It's a freaking cool image. I mean,
It is.
it maybe looks a bit problematic, but yeah. So.
Because it's black.
So anyway, is that it?
Welcome back to the Hyperrealist, everybody. We're going to go sleep again for 25 years, and then we'll have another thing to talk about.
Up next,
Subscribe to FearFic on YouTube to stay up to date on new episodes.